All right, everybody, welcome back. Cheers for joining. I'm going to do a vlog, quick one, about some experience I've had back in the 90s, which I thought might be an interesting story to tell. And I were umming and ahhing about whether to tell it, because it does go back to a different time, if you like. Yes, I survived the 90s. A lot did, thankfully. But back in the 90s, I weren't exactly on the straight and narrow. Oh no. So it's a bit of a confession as well. Stick with it, and stick with it to end if you can, because I'm going to be talking about my life in the 90s, what I did for a living, but what my side hustle were. Might raise a few eyebrows, but it's worth sharing. I worked in a factory. I did long hours. I did 4 on 4 off. I did continental shifts. I did days, nights and afters. We'd be up at 4 in the morning. We'd start just after 5. We'd be on production lines. It weren't easy. Everybody needed something extra. People did overtime. People had 2 jobs. I had 2 jobs, all right. My second one were a rate side hustle. I used to bootleg VHS tapes way back. And everybody wanted them. So yeah, thanks for joining again. And just if you can, just drop us a like and a comment, because it really helps the channel grow. So what were it like back in the 90s in a factory? Well, I'll tell you this. I'll just give you a bit of a backstory to what life were like first. Working in a factory, an electronics factory, that's long gone, long since gone. Probably still paying into pension. Will I see a penny of it? Who knows? It were a massive company. They had a branch nearby in South Yorkshire, and it were electronics, and they were making printed circuit boards. So I thought, this sounds interesting. And I wanted a job at time that give me a bit more money. So I went into the factory, and I'm sure there's loads of you that's done factory work, and it's for people and it's not for people. You can take it or leave it. Some people love it because they can go in there, they can do a shift, and they can clock on and clock off, and it's as simple as that. The work might be repetitive, the company's good around you, you're all in the same boat, you're all trying to make a living, you might do a bit of overtime, like I said, and you make of it what you can. You know, there weren't that many good jobs around, and it was a bit above national minimum wage. It were a bittersweet time, because I had to move to shifts and doing 12 hours for the first time, and not seeing my wife, because I was fairly newly married, going back a while, innit? Not seeing my wife as much, coming home late, or going to bed early to start early. It were a wake-up call for me, you know. I'd only been in my late 20s. It were good, but it weren't easy. Well, the work were like assembly line work when I first started. So when you see these videos, or you might have even got experience yourself in working in a factory with assembly work, and there's no bad job, because at the end of the day, you're making something that somebody really wants. You know, you get a feeling of, at the end of the day, you've contributed. You can see a product, right? So there were a bit of pride in it, and each different job down the line stood one of us doing the different job, and the circuit board had come out of a machine, and it had come down the belt, the conveyor belt, and we'd put it into his rigs, called them rigs, and shut this drawer on them, and it were a satellite circuit board. So we'd tune the satellite channels in on a TV before the board had any assembly or any buttons, and I had a job as a tester, and we used to have to check the channels, which were as good and as fun as it sounds. Can you imagine? I've always loved my films, me. Absolutely, you know, since being a kid, like I said, with videos. But can you imagine a job that paid you to sit and watch films and look at quality of channels back then in South Yorkshire? So there were a lot to be had with it. But you, obviously, if anybody's worked in a factory, it's all about bang, 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 get them down line, get the production out, get the finished product in the shops. So there's a lot of rushing. You'd have time management people stood at the side here with a stopwatch. Can you get that in and out a bit quicker? How many channels are you testing? I'm only testing these 3. Right, don't test any more. So there's an element of productivity, an element of quality and control, right? Which, you know, we did a decent job of it. We used to have to wear white smocks, white gloves, static straps on your feet, and you used to have to wear a wristband that you'd click onto your desk to stop static going onto the circuitry board, right? So it felt like an important job at the time. We had a right laugh. Honest to God, we had some of the best laughs I've ever had in my life working with a bunch of people on a production line when you've done it for months and months and it's second nature. You can do a job with your eyes shut, like literally, and still do it and still hit your target because you've done it and it's repetition. And when you finish your shift, you're not thinking of work because there's nothing to take home. You've built what it is and it's on a pallet and it's going into a shop, right? So we had a laugh. I liked the testing part of it because, especially on nights, when I worked nights, because there were a lot of interesting channels on cable TV, and especially at night. One that springs to mind, like TV 1000, where you'd start testing and then Godzilla would come on. Always a good Godzilla film on TV 1000. And that's where I watched a lot of the 90s Godzilla films and late 80s Godzilla films. And they were fantastic to watch. You know, great films. So by the time my dinner had come round, I'd watched the film because when I've took it out and put it on belt and put it in again, I've only missed like 2 minutes, and then the film starts again. Quickly check, in, film's on again. So whatever I missed, no doubt would be repeated. And by the end of halfway through the shift, I'd definitely watched the full film, right, and still getting paid to do my job. Brilliant. And I did other jobs on there. They didn't seem to have much of a job on there that, you know, there were people really, really fantastic at it, and there were people that were average at it. But there were no standout job that you'd have to have a super qualification for on the production line itself, or that you had to be a certain skill for on the line. It was assembly work and testing work, and it were a great environment. I worked with many different types of people, many different cultures, loads of people from agencies that you get to know, and they were absolutely fantastic people. You'd have a right laugh with them, but then you might not see them again until it gets busy, and then they'd come back in. Oh, how you've been? I ain't seen you for 6 months. Oh, it were a right good crack. And everybody had a little side hustle, like I said. Everybody had something going off. You know, a couple of lads used to take these satellite printed circuit boards home. You know, it just happened. And then, you know, a couple of weeks later, they'd take a front panel, and by the time the end of the month, they'd assembled their own satellite and they'd give it to family or what have you. I'm not condoning that because that's obviously theft, and you know. But you know, it's like when you're working in a factory, in a sweet factory, and you put one in your mouth, innit? You know what I mean? It's just life. These things happen. People find little things, little ways to make money. But one day, I'd actually thought, this is what I can do. I can make some money here. Oh, I can. And I'll enjoy doing it. And it were a big risk, but I thought, I wonder if I can make this work. And how am I going to make it work? Well, yeah, so like I said, in the 90s, I had a massive collection of films, mostly on video. And I used to lend these tapes out to people on production line. Can you gears that back? How the hell have you got this tape, JT? You know, it'd be something of similar to a video nasty that's been banned for years. How have you got that? And the quality is incredible. It's like watching TV. It's not like a pirate film. How the hell have you got that? Is what they used to ask. And then somebody would say, can you get me one? So that's how it started. So I were getting them from a guy in Rotherham, and it were a weird setup. And this is just how it were. I contacted him through a fan magazine in the back of a Dark Side magazine, who then eventually ripped back to me, like a PO box thing. You know, after a few weeks, I got a phone number. From a phone number, I got to ring him and speak to him. Then I went through to Rotherham to meet him on bus, because I didn't drive back then. And then after that, it were a case of he'd let me buy tapes. And I were amazed at the quality of these tapes. They were absolutely fantastic quality. They were stereo sound. You know, I had a decent VHS player and they were picking up Nikon stereo, and the picture quality was almost broadcast quality, right? And I thought, what's he doing here? So I gets to know him more, gets to know more about him. You know, I become a sort of a friend, but I were always buying, you know, because I wanted to collect and carry on collecting these rare films. And there were people at work wanting to see them. So penny dropped eventually, a bit slow on uptake, and I started asking questions. Turns out he'd got a Laserdisc player, and I'd got a Laserdisc player. And somehow he will put in the Laserdisc films that you can get from all over the world, and you could import them. I were getting them back then in mid-90s. I were getting them from Hong Kong. I were getting them from Jersey and America, Netherlands. They'd pay postage and there'd be mail clubs, and they'd send you the disc. The Laserdisc themselves used to come, and they'd always have a catalogue in from the company. Things like people remember, like Laser Express, Laserdisc House.
This is Pioneer Home Theater, with Laserdisc images 60% sharper than most VCRs, the world's leading AV receivers, speakers customized for home theater, and a big screen picture that's real as life. From the leaders in audio and video, home theater so advanced, you don't just watch it.
Mail order companies before the internet were big, and in the catalogues you'd flick through them and you'd go, oh my god, I can't believe Jurassic Park Criterion Special Edition. Look at all these extras. It's like 3 discs in a box, in a massive box set. And you knew if you'd got decent speakers and you'd got a decent TV and a setup with your Laserdisc player, you knew when you put that Jurassic Park on, it was superb. It was just as good as I hope you could get at home. Because I never had a projector, I never went that far. But to me, it was just incredible. And I found out he were using a piece of hardware, an actual piece of hardware, to run through to get from, and I won't tell you the details because I'll just admit it now. Obviously, it weren't legal then. It's not legal now, and I don't want to encourage it because as much as I'm telling you this story, what I used to do in the 90s, obviously it comes with some regret because I love film. So it's a weird one, but it was just a time, and it's just what everybody did, and it's just what people did.
The Federation Against Copyright Theft is fighting an organized crime. The crime? Video piracy. Whether a professional gang or a lone individual, video pirates are thieves. Thieves who are getting very rich at your expense. The video business has become very important to film companies. Over half the videotapes available to the public are illegal copies. The money from those illegal copies is going directly into the pockets of crooks, not to the filmmakers. Counterfeit gangs are earning literally millions of pounds every week. And cinemas could disappear for good. Under a new law passed by Parliament, video pirates can now be sentenced to 2 years in prison and given unlimited fines.
So, yeah, I don't mind telling you. So this piece of hardware were a lot of money. A hell of a lot of money. I mean, Laserdiscs. I don't know if anybody's collected Laserdiscs, people that are into films. It's basically a 12-inch compact, looks like a compact disc, 12-inch, with film on. But both sides, so it had to have an arm that went from down and then across.
By connecting this wire to the antenna input on the TV set, the player becomes operable. At first glance, this player, Magnavision, gives the appearance of a highly stylized record player. However, I notice the absence of a stylus or needle. An optical laser scanner.
To read, so the laser arm would go down and across. Or you take it out and flip it over, you know. But anyway, I'm going on, aren't I? But yeah, Laserdiscs were about between 30 and 100 quid. Some were more than 100 quid. Some were a lot more than 100 quid. And I used to love them. So I'd get them for Christmas. Machine were like 800 or 900 quid. I got that like paid for that monthly, you know, like you did on video recorders. So I paid for my machine monthly, and I got me Laserdisc for like Christmases, birthdays, save up a bit of extra money from working at factory, treat myself to a film. And I thought to myself, now I know what this device is. If I got this device and like say it cost me a month's wage, people are wanting these films. You know, would the quality be okay that I could make? And could I actually take them into the factory where I knew hundreds of people and where I would say a good lot of them liked films and a good lot of them got on with me, you know, because we used to have a laugh. And I thought, I could try, you know. So I took a right gamble and got one of these machines second hand, and I hooked it all up. And you know, it were different back then. There's ways that you can do it now, and there's ways that you could do it then, and they're both totally different. So without going into detail, I got my first tape and I played it through, and it was absolutely perfect. It was really, really good quality stereo sound. Now, here's the bit that makes me feel a little bit easier and not quite as guilty. Remember, some of these films, it weren't that they were at pictures and I were, you know, hurting the label by selling them. Although it eventually became that.
I wanted to come down with film crew and film from back of cinema.
Right, that's actually illegal to film a film.
Yeah, but I do it for a student project.
It were a case of some of these obscure horror films had never been released in UK, and certainly when they were released they were banned. So it were a way of a community, if you like, initially, of swapping tapes, seeing films that you couldn't see, a bit of an underground scene, if you like, that kind of evolved when I bought this machine and thought I'll try it myself. And I didn't want to set about it to make money, really. I just wanted to be able to have buy the odd Laserdisc every now and again. So I tried it. I went into work and I gave somebody a tape. I says, here, this is first one on me. First one on me. And I thought, I don't know how much I'm going to charge for this. Maybe a few quid, right? Tapes to buy from Morrison's were like $2.99 for 4, let's say. So if I can get a couple of quid and put it in a jar at home, right? That'll be me. That'll be me done. Bit of a side hustle. Wow. I mean, the guy brought it back. He says, this is incredible. I don't know how you've done this. I've never seen, because we were used to, weren't we, bootlegs on videos, crackly screens, mono sound, fluttering in speakers, you know, really, really. A video bootleg back then was really shit. Back in 80s, it was shit. In 90s, things changed, like I said. And I did a couple of these tapes, and then word got round. And then I started bootlegging them properly. And I'd get a tape in from overseas, take a chance on it. Sorry, get a disc in. I'd order the disc. It'd come from overseas, pay a lot of money for it, and think, right, I've only got to get so many of these done, and I broke even. And spoilers, a lot of the time, a hell of a lot of the time, I broke even on it. And it felt like I'd got a bit of a... I think it were like the acceptance as well and fitting in more in the factory. If I'm honest with you, if you think a bit sort of more psychologically on it, I had a lot of people coming to me and talking about films, and I love talking about films, as you know. So I liked that element, the social element, and the helping somebody see something that they've not seen, as much as I liked, obviously, the bootlegging for its perks, you know. Yeah, so it were an interesting time, but the reason I've made this vlog is we had some fun, you know, and it were a different time in the 90s. But there were people doing a lot worse than that, man. There were people going out and chipping satellite boxes so that they could unlock all channels. They were into that game way before Firestick Man. He wasn't even born, Firestick Man, or his 6 brothers and uncles. They were nowhere not seen, they'd not to come. There were guys getting paid, technicians, on black market, going around and fitting like a bridge inside a cable box so that you could unlock all your channels. And then they started selling the cable boxes where there's all the channels in. And there's all sorts of different hustles, sidelines in the factory. Someone's got knockoff clothes. Someone's fetched some trainers in. There were even people cooking food at home, like really, really high-end food, and bringing it in Tupperwares and selling meals before any of this Deliveroo, before any of this stuff were. People that had got a bit more ambition and people that wanted to make a little bit of a more comfortable life for themselves, they had side hustles.
Any job where I can take home a reasonable wage to my wife at the end of the week, and also know at the same time that at the end of a week's work, when I've paid my missus, I've also got a few bob in my pocket.
Don't get me wrong, they did. Fair play to them. So one of the funniest things where's he going with this? Well, I think it's, you know, some of this stuff's worth talking about and documenting, isn't it? Because this is what it was like. So like I said, Factory Life were very funny most of the time. Sometimes cruel, because you'd be there a long time. And sometimes soul destroying if you were on your own and you're doing a shift where there weren't many people to talk to. Difficult, soul destroying sometimes. But anyway, this guy fetched this tape into me and he's like, "You're having that back?" I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "It's terrible quality." It says it's hissing, it goes to black and white. I says, no, that's not, no way. And I promise you, I picked this tape up and I'm looking at label. I thought, it's not even my writing. That's not I've got bad handwriting. This were like lovely handwriting. I says, this isn't mine. He says, "Oh, I got it from you." I says, "No, you didn't." He says, "Yeah, I got it from this guy who gets it from you, and he gave me a list, it's your list." I went, "Show me that list." Anyway, turns out, I didn't know this at the time, there was somebody already doing them, already doing bootlegs. And I didn't know, and he was 6 foot tall. They pointed him out, they says, it's his from his list. He's over there on machines. And I looked and I thought, oof, what do I do here? Do I pack in and he gets all orders? Or do I go, do you know what? I'm enjoying ride here. Chuff him. And I thought, chuff him. So I says, "Look, that's not one of mine, that's one of his. Go and tell him his quality's shit. And tell anybody who's complaining about his quality not to bother. I'll give him tape for free." I swear, they were coming up to me with his returns and I were redoing them free. And I put a list in each video and they were going wild for him. And he must have been absolutely gutted. But it were like Mexican standoff in factory. He couldn't kick off because he shouldn't be doing it. And I couldn't kick off because I shouldn't be doing it. And I didn't want attention around me. He didn't want attention around him. And it were crazy. It were crazy. And then we became, I would say, not friends, but on an understanding. So he'd have his customers, I'd have my customers. And I told him, I had a chat with him. I said, "Look, there's room enough. We're not big time. We're just doing a few tapes for friends." And he's like, "Yeah." And anyway, it turns out he were big time. Like, he were at it and he were doing stalls and stuff. And I didn't do any of that. You know, I had a life, you know, I had a busy working life. And, doing these tapes, right? There were no quick way of doing them. There weren't. You wouldn't believe it. You had to do it in real time, so I had to stay up. Do you remember when I said Laserdiscs had different sides? Some of them had 4 sides. So the amount of times I've seen, and it's not a bad thing, Robocop Special Edition through night and watching it literally all the way through so that I could edit between the tape and edit the tape turning over, the disc turning over, so it'd be a seamless transfer. I put a lot of care into it. I didn't do covers or all like that because I always said to people, this is a fantastic film. You know, it's not an original I'm giving you. You need to go and buy it. Go and get a Laserdisc player. Well, people didn't. They weren't that readily available. So they just had tapes from me. I weren't selling it as the real deal. You know, it were a bootleg. Everybody knew it were a bootleg. So you know, it was just funny. But there were lists flying about all over that weren't mine. So then there were a third person. I'm still friends with third person. He could have been an original one, to be honest, but I'm still friends with third person. He's an absolute family friend. I won't tell you his name because a lot of you will know him. But he was bang at it like me. He had some nerve, and he still has. He's got his own business. So he learnt a lot through it. He does it in his own business. But he had some boy, I wished I could tell you his name, tell you a bit more about him. I've seen him. He were a mate of mine. let's just call him Bobby, shall we? But his name's not Bobby. I seen Bobby turn up at a church fete, right? I'm selling bric-a-brac. I says, what you fetch, Bobby? He says, DVDs. I says, no, joking aside, you're not flogging films here. Oh, I am. He'd got tapes. We'd moved on to DVD recording back through time, you know. He'd got bootleg DVDs and tapes. I says, Vicar takes money here. He says, what do you mean? I says, he comes round and it's a fiver. He says, he's one of my best customers. I says, yo, I can't believe it. He says, ah. So instead of giving him a £5 stall, he picked a film, Vicar. I'm not even joking. He were in it, father. He were having tapes. Of course they were. I had a phone call at home. It got quite big. Like, I could not leave. I could not leave that factory because I were doing that well with tapes. When I say well, I'm no businessman. I were buying more films. So what did I make and what? You know, odds and evens. It were just cash in hand, weren't it? I certainly didn't make enough to save money or put it away or, you know, for a rainy day or like that. You know, young lad, I was buying films. It was my passion. But yeah, so it to get a bit sketchy, I've had some run-ins, proper run-ins. Like, I used to be really frightened and paranoid about this. I had a phone, I got home from work one day, I always remember it, we were in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock. Phone rang, and I thought, yeah, no, we didn't really get that many calls, you know, a landline, didn't have mobile.
One by DVD.
Phone rang, I picked it up, he went, is that John? I went, who is it, please? They went, oh, don't worry, mate. I just want 4 tapes. I went, what do you mean 4 tapes? He says, you know, you do videos. I went, I ain't got a clue what you mean, pal. I honestly don't know. I think you've got a wrong number here. Are you wanting video rental? He's like, no, you know. Yeah, I've got one of your lists. I went, look, mate, I think you've got a wrong number, pal. No idea. Put phone down, absolutely bricked myself. I drew curtains. I was like, Jesus Christ, it's getting real, this. There's somebody knows, and oh, I don't want, because the thing were, if you were big at it, they'd send coppers round, police, and they'd confiscate your equipment. Fair enough, you know, and they'd confiscate your equipment, but they wouldn't stop there. They'd confiscate your TV and all, and they'd confiscate some of your other equipment, and they'd confiscate stuff just for confiscating's sake. It's exempt. Yeah, I had a couple of mates that got done by it because they were just like doing it in stalls, doing it in markets, they were big time. A couple of them got the collars felt, and a couple of them got off with it, and they said, we'll take all your films and all your equipment, and you can go with your caution. So they had thousands of pounds worth of equipment, and the guys just had to cut the losses. And some of them were back up and running next day. Yeah, they were. So it must have been big for some people. Yeah. But it's just unreal, isn't it, when you think about some of the stuff you've done. And like I say, I'm not proud of it. How do you think I mean, it's not for sympathy, but imagine me going into on set of a film as an extra, which I'm lucky enough to have done, and then looking at direct thinking I used to sell bootleg films. You know, and you think, oh, I'm a bit of a, you know, you can't have it both ways, can you? I love films, but then have I damaged a few? You just do stupid things when you're young, don't you? And you do things on a side hustle. And to be totally honest with you, in the 80s, when the video nasty scourge happened, people had to trade films or they would never have seen them. So it was just an extension of that. And I truly believe that. And these days, I'm all about buying the best version when I can afford it, and my favourite film. Even Shudder films that I watch on Shudder, I pay for every subscription on Shudder. If I see a film on there, like Coffee Table, like the original, what's that, See No Evil? Yeah. I'll wait until there's a really, really good physical media release and buy it. And I've bought them because they're that good a film. And I'll watch them again and I'll enjoy them again. So, yeah. One day, I was followed home from one at suppliers, one at warehouses. I was followed through 3 villages and into my village. I thought, this is game over now. What am I going to do? And then that night I thought, because it weren't too long after the phone call, I thought, it's not worth it, this ain't worth it. I don't want to get banged up here just for the sake of making a few bob. So I rang my brother up, didn't I? I says, right, Andrew here, do me a favour. He says, what is it, son? I says, yeah, I need everything clearing out. He says, what do you mean? You had a knock? I says, I've not had a knock now. He says, well, what's up with you then? I says, look, I says, getting a bit, people following me. That. He says, yeah, it's all in your head. You crackers, he's not bothered about you. I said, look, just take them for me. So he took all my tapes and my gear and had them for a bit. Only for about a week. I thought, yeah, I'll just carry on and take a chance. So I just carried on. You'd get people coming up to you. Like I used to take them into work in carrier bags, right? I used to have carrier bags full of tapes, full of tapes. Not my food. My food would not even be, I couldn't even carry my own food. I always had to buy their snap. I always had to go to their canteen because I could not carry food in because I got too many carrier bags full of tapes. It's no lie. At security guard, I used to like drop him and move past his desk and like shuffle as if he's not seen him. But I knew he'd seen him because I knew he'd seen me come in building. But I didn't want to take piss. I didn't want him to be like, oh, you're bringing all that in here. What are you doing? I thought, I don't want him under question because he was sound called John. He was a really nice lad. And he called me one day on Tannoy. He says, can you come to reception? I thought, I've done here. Again, I'm going down. He says to me, you got a list? I says, what do you mean? He says, come on. Says, Jesus. He says, I'm on security. I see you coming in with bags full of tapes. When you leave, you've only got an empty carrier bag with about 6 other carrier bags in. He says, come on. I says, well, you're gonna obviously you're gonna tell. He says, what are you talking about? He says, list's not even for me. He says, I get them off other lad. He says, I've always got them off other lad. No disrespect, but I says, oh, fair enough. You're loyal. He says, it's not even for me. It's for gaffer at company. I says, you're kidding me. I says, I don't know how I feel about that. He says, the gaffer of the company who owns the building, who's running this operation, knows everybody's doing bootlegs and stuff. He's not bothered. But he wants a list and he wants a good price. So I did him a deal. I had to. And I thought, it could be a sting this. I could be keen him it and he could be like, right, we're going to bring bobbies in and all sorts. But no, he were a good customer. I had, there were a couple knocked on the door who I knew. He used to have a couple. He lived on the same street. He weren't bothered. But I think these guys that went on and then did market stalls, and I think these guys that did covers, trying to pass things off as authentic, I think that's when it went to shit for them, and I think that's why they got greedy. I think everything's sidelines are all right and side hustles. If you've got, I mean, I look at it this way: I had a full-time job paying into system tax, right? I was buying original films on a rate of probably more than an avid collector. Half of these films weren't available over here. You couldn't get them over here. I'm trying to make myself feel right about it, aren't I? Oh. Anyway, I were a bugger in the 90s, but not too much of a bugger that I hope I've lost 1 million subscribers. I ain't got 1 million subscribers. Hey, I hope you hadn't thought, well, he were a bugger him. I'm going to unsubscribe because I'm on my way to over 2,500 and I get near 2,560. So honestly, it blows me away. So thank you for that. So I hope it hasn't put you off. And the Factory life were a funny life. I really enjoyed it. And I have fond memories. I do speak to a couple of people that used to work there still. Really, all these years I do. Oh, and when it was shutting down. We were all getting made redundant. You want to see some of the stuff that went off when it was shutting. They were walking out with arms full of stuff. There were people, they weren't bothered. Rightly or wrongly, and I'd never nick out from there because I thought, it might look, I'll take a screw home, there'll be a screw in my pocket, I'll get coppers. I didn't take nothing from there but a bit of time, now and again, just handing my lists out, and a bit of storage that I didn't pay for, my locker, you know what I mean? So I just thought I'd talk about that and then talk about what I used to do in the 90s. I suppose I were a bit of a pirate then, I would imagine. Before that, I used to do, this is another confession, this is probably for another vlog, and I've already hinted at it, and I've already spoke about it, and you might have caught it, but we used to do community work. Well, we called it community work. It was basically running a pirate radio station in Sheffield during the rave era, during the underground rave era, during stuff like 1992 onwards, 91, 92, 93, 94, all that sort of stuff. We used to be up all night DJing on various different Sheffield radio stations, but I think that's for another vlog, so maybe I'll do that. I could write a book on that one, because there were some sketchy moments there. Oh yes, Spittle Hill, as a 19-year-old at Spittle Hill, 3 o'clock in the morning in a flat, and then it all kicks off, and yeah, and when it kicked off, you weren't on you were on your own, but you were your best mate, and you wanted to get out of there in one piece, and you were in a city you didn't really know back then, around people that you didn't really know. It were all nameless, and some of it were dangerous work. Even back now, I still go, ooh, I don't know why I did that. That were a bit sketchy. I'll talk about it later, but thank you very much. I really appreciate you watching my channel. Thank you for listening to my stories. I love telling them. And the support you're showing my channel is incredible, and I want to keep it growing. So, nice one. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves, don't you? Thank you.